Welcome or welcome back to Pewdiepie. I'm Zui and I hope you enjoyed today's video. But before we get right into it, I'm obligated to remind you to click either the like or dislike button, commenting something down below, and of course sharing the video so more people can see and enjoy it. This is very important as it helps with the YouTube algorithm. I want you to know that your help is greatly appreciated. If you have any suggestions or ideas for a story, my Discord link is in my link tree that is down in the description, as well as my Patreon and Ko-fi for any donations you may want to send my way. Every cent counts. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed today's video.
Hey, are you expecting mail? Asked your husband nonchalant as he entered your living room while going through a bundle of letters. Immediately you groaned. It's my grandma most likely.
Can't you just read it once? It's getting a little ridiculous.
For about 3 weeks now you had been getting a letter every 2 days that was addressed to you from various family members, mostly your grandmother. Safe to say you didn't have the best relationship with your family. Not to mention, it seemed like everyone but you was dying, and you were not planning on attending any funerals, especially if it were people that you loved so much like them.
Can't you just give it a try? Maybe there's something cool written.
With a deadpan expression you snatched the letter from your husband. Fine. Do you want to stay in the room with me to make sure I read it? You snarled.
Calm down, you big puppy.
You blushed angrily.
But, yeah, I want to. I'm curious about my wife's mystery family. Just making sure I didn't accidentally marry the secret love child of All for One and a street dog.
For a moment you were genuinely insulted. You are suffering from a mutation quirk. It gave you a second pair of wolf ears that sprouted out of your head. It enhanced your hearing by quite a lot. Your fingers ended in sharp claws that required almost daily filing and cutting to keep at a comfortable length. Your legs were slightly bent, like the hind legs of a dog, and were covered in black fur, making wearing shoes impossible, and pants, well, that was just a nightmare. So you preferred dresses. All that was rounded up with a bushy tail that your husband, a pro-hero by the name of Bakugou, just loved cuddling with in bed. Of course, there were worse fates than yours, like your landlord. When he was kind, he was quite the prickly dude, all thanks to his head being quite literally a cactus with a mouth and 2 eyes. To this day you were curious about the photosynthesis question, but that would be rude to ask. Sitting down on your sofa, you quickly ripped open the letter. As you read it over, your eyes narrowed, while your husband sat down on the armrest next to you.
So, what's happening?
She's dead. Bakugou clapped his hands.
Well, that's good news, right?
I mean, sure, I hated everyone in my family, but they didn't deserve to die. Especially since the oldest anyone outside of my grandma god was, what, 50? Bakugou frowned.
I hope I didn't offend you.
You shook your head. I don't care about them. But there's some morality issue here. They weren't terrible, just not really caring, really. And you knew why. Before your mother died, she told you of the terrible curse that had befallen your family. The reason everyone was looking out for themselves. The reason every other member of your family lived fun, quick lives, only to be torn apart at a young age. While everyone in your family seemed to have accepted it, you were afraid. It says right here that I'm owning her house now.
Why is that important?
The house was built by my great-great-grandfather. By hand.
When was that?
You shook your head, not wanting to diverge from the topic. We gotta go there. Bakugou shrugged.
Why?
Because it is my property. And besides, if we can figure out a way to deal with the curse, we can probably turn it into a vacation home. That conversation was 2 weeks ago. And today it was finally time. You and Bakugou packed your stuff and loaded it onto his car. Since Baku became a pro hero, he had taken on the role as third biggest hero in the Endeavor agency, right behind his rival Deku. While you weren't a vindictive person, seeing Endeavor's own son be relegated as just another hero in his agency was a little hilarious to you. As Bakugou was lazily driving, you hand-fed him small pieces of gummy bear candy. The drive would be long, and with your weird legs, you had trouble properly hitting the car pedals. So driver's license was out of the question for you. If he wanted it or not, he needed to come with you.
Tell me more about the curse, he said.
Just when you left the city's outskirts and entered the countryside. It happened even before my family came to Japan. We always called her our greatest grandmother. She was a first-generation quirk user, and her quirk was, well, it has been plaguing our family ever since. You gave Bakugou another gummy bear. Her quirk was creatively called Final Destination. Every day, every night, every moment, it could happen. In the form of a seizure, she would get vivid hallucinations, where she saw, felt, and even mimicked the future. More specifically, the final 24 hours of a yet-to-be-born member of our family. Bakugou blinked.
Well, that's awesome.
No, it's not. You interrupted before you could say something nonsensical about how he would use and abuse the quirk if he had the means to do so. You see, it works like every other premonition-based quirk. It's just uniquely hers, cursed many generations to come. Remember what Aizawa said when we still went to UA? Bakugou sighed.
Remind me.
You growled.
He said it on the day we started dating, you dork. Jesus, don't be angry. To think that came from a guy like me, huh?
Sarcastically you muttered.
Yeah, hilarious.
You really were no longer in the mood to continue the story. Grumbling, you turned on the radio.
Can you give me a red one? A gummy bear, I mean.
You huffed and looked outside the window. Bakugou rolled his eyes. Quietly, the drive continued. Your husband would have felt bad, but he really had no grounds to argue. He himself was prone to outbursts of anger. However, his lips curled up into a smile when a large wheat field came into view.
Maybe we should take a break here,
he suggested. Was it patronizing? Maybe. But as soon as the car stopped, you rushed out of the car into the cornfield. Bakugou blinked after you and grinned. Hey, can you see me? You shouted as you jumped up from the field.
Yes, honey, I can see you.
This is very fun for me, you shouted after jumping again. Amused, Bakugou leaned against the car and pulled out his phone. He was curious about your family's curse now. And honestly, if you found him searching this stuff up, you'd be making fun of him for doing so. The man started by searching for your family name. After filtering out celebrities with similar names, and heroes with even similar names, he found a few notes on epitaph sites that listed strange causes of death. There were 3 entries of people who shared your last name, while also having a mutation quirk that was similar to yours. One died at the age of 20 after being kicked by a horse. Another had their roller coaster harness break mid loop-de-loop. The last one was an accident. It had one addendum, with the words, "A grinder was involved," written under it. This left your husband with a terrible feeling in his gut. Sure, the man wasn't superstitious, didn't believe in ghosts, curses, or demons, but he never could shake that one nagging feeling. Eventually, you returned, your tail wagging uncontrollably and your tongue hanging out.
Where'd you head further down the road?
You were heaving heavily from exhaustion.
Can I have a glass of water?
With a smile, your husband leaned into the car and pulled out a small plastic bottle of Lunch Rush's patented pink stuff. A raspberry soda with just the right amount of sugar to still be considered diet product. You grabbed the bottle and downed it in a single go. Meanwhile, Bakugou grinned at you, both impressed and expectantly. And there came your belch.
Ha, that was a nice one.
You blushed, and both of you returned to your seats. A few minutes down the line, Bakugou once again brought up the topic of the curse.
So, now that you have it out of your system, what is actually going on here?
You sighed, but by now you were too exhausted to fight him.
He did this on purpose, didn't he?
Fine. My greatest grandmother's quirk. Our curse. Her seizures didn't end with just the muscle spasms. Every time she went out of a daze, she would go right into, well, something similar. It was like a demented state, where her only goal was procuring a pen and a paper. Apparently, she was like a zombie. Either way, whatever she wrote down was the premonition. What she had seen in her state of being, I mean. The final 24 hours of a family member's life.
Bakugou blinked. So, what's the problem here?
The problem is the fact that if only one person reads the manuscript, it sets the prophecy in stone. Is your death drowning at the age of 20, then you drown at age 20. Worst of all is, when your death was foretold, but you're already older, because no one read the manuscript up until then, you instantly die from whatever cause it was. She went far into the future. I wonder how many of my not even at the time born family members in the future, if they were cursed without ever reading their end.
Did you ever read yours?
Oh. I think when my greatest grandmother turned 70, the entire family just scattered, leaving her alone in her giant house. All I know is that my direct grandmother, she moved there, wanted to make sure no one reads the books of the family members who were still not born or alive. Bakugou hummed.
Sounds to me your GM was a good person after all. Why did you hate her?
Everyone in my family lived for their own thrill. They wanted to enjoy their lives as much as possible before they would reach their dedicated end. Bakugou bit his lower lip. That sounded horrible and scary. Especially the thought of something in the future being unmoving. This fate set in stone. But what really freaked him out was the thought of someone else without your knowledge reading one of them and then killing you immediately. 2 more hours passed. By now you were quietly snoring next to him. When you began driving through a lush forest, it was dark, gloomy, but you would probably love it. He suppressed a chuckle.
A lot of trees to mark your territory on, little puppy.
He mumbled under his breath. But then he shook. Above the tree's crown, something came into view. It was big. A tower?
He gulped. The navigator said, "Go right." One more turn and his jaw dropped. Before him stood a giant mansion, in a German style. Definitely didn't fit the Japanese aesthetic of the villages that had surrounded the forest. He parked close to its entrance. Quietly, he looked at you. You were humming in your sleep. Nah, he thought. As he leaned over to the passenger side, snatching the house key from your purse. He'd explore this place on his own first. An opportunity too good to pass up. He opened the driver's side door and left. As he ascended the steps to the entrance door, he felt a foreboding feeling. A dread, a fear, and one simple thought. If by accident he read your book, he would seal your fate. He desperately hoped that was an indicator of who which book belonged to. Bakugou entered, and he was now inside the house. Thankfully, there was a light switch. After turning it on, it illuminated a quaint little entrance room. So electricity was still here. That made this far less scary. Plus, he wouldn't need a flashlight. Slowly, he began to search the abandoned building. First, he checked the ground floor. It had everything a person needed. Big living room, small library. The titles indicated that those definitely weren't your family's books, so those were safe. There was a study, a kitchen, and 2 bathrooms. Now that was decadent, he thought. There even was a tiny bedroom. He looked at the sparse decoration and a way too new-looking photo of an old lady with a dog nose. This probably was your grandmother's. A horrible chill ran down his spine. If everything needed for living was on the ground floor, what the hell was on the second? He almost expected someone to rush him the moment he set foot on the first stair leading upwards. The air up here was stale, like if no one had opened a window in years here. Dust was floating into his nose, making it itchy. And up here the lights only barely worked. A sign that no one had been here for a very long time. His heartbeat increased, and he desperately wished the trees from outside would let in just a tiny bit more sun through the windows. The hallway he was in was lined with doors, akin to a hotel. With his heart pounding, he reached the first door. There was a window. He looked behind himself. The door there had one too. Gulping, he looked through it. Behind the door was a adorable pink bedroom. Old toys lied on the floor. And then his heart stopped for a beat. A human mannequin the size of a child lied on the bed. He gulped. Bakugou wished he'd seen it sooner. Wouldn't have scared him as much. With quivering lips, he inserted the front door key into the keyhole. Click. The door opened. This must have been a master key rather than just a regular front door key. And the man couldn't believe it worked. The room's air felt dead. Dusty. Cobwebs. Dead flies lied next to the window. And on a small desk, covered in a thick layer of dust, lied a tiny book. Quietly, he reached out for it. Like he was possessed by whatever evil force housed in this building. The book had Gretchen written on it. And the first page had a date, many years in the past. Gretchen. He looked at the mannequin and back at the book. So your name was Gretchen. Died just 10 years old. Oh, poor thing. Quietly he read the book. It told the story of a little girl named Gretchen during Christmas Eve, and how she awoke with heavy stomach pangs. She was hungry, ravenous even. She snuck into a kitchen, hoping to steal Santa's cookies before he got to them, but she was only greeted with crumbs. Hungrily the girl searched for something to eat that would not be too obvious for their parents to find. And in the bathroom, she found what she was looking for. Beautiful red berries. The story ended with the girl lying in her bed, crying as she slowly passed away from the pain in her stomach. The book's descriptions were vivid and detailed, and for a moment he could feel his own stomach turn. Bakugou had never been poisoned in his life before, and judging by this, he never wanted to experience such torment himself. On the final page was a crudely drawn picture of a Christmas holly branch ring. With a shocked expression, the man closed the book and put it back on the desk. Rushing outside, he locked the door. His back pressed against it, he slid down. What a terrible fate, he thought. Bakugou didn't know how long he had been sitting there. It wasn't until you woke up from a car nap that he even as much as moved. "There you are," he said as you peeked into the hallway he was in. "The hell are you doing? Don't tell me you read my book." Bakugou shook his head. "No, I didn't, but I was curious," he said. "I understand now, though. Also, why didn't you tell me your family was German migrants? I mean, Gretchen?" You chuckled. "Only my greatest grandmother came from Germany. By our second generation, we were already full-blooded Japanese people." "Right. What is it with Germans having these scary quirks anyways?" "You look spooked," he grumbled. "Come, let's make dinner. I already looked through every room downstairs. We can check up here later." Bakugou really didn't want to spend a single second in another one of these scary bedrooms. While you made dinner, Bakugou sat quietly at the kitchen table. "You look pale. Was it really that scary?" "Babe, am I the one cooking right now?" "No, he shouldn't snap at you." "Sorry. I don't..." "Like, you know what internet forums I go on? I'm used to scary shit. But as I was reading it, for a moment it felt like I was that girl herself. I felt her pain, and I think I have a newfound fear of dying." You forced a smile. "Aw, it's okay, I think. You're Bakugou Katsuki, you can beat any challenge." "Thanks, babe." Bakugou only called you babe when he was feeling emotional. It was like a strange attempt at saving face and be masculine. It was adorable, but you didn't tell him not wanting to make him feel uncomfortable. 20 minutes later you served him his meal, a simple miso soup. He didn't look like he wanted anything big after such an experience. "Are you traumatized?" you asked carefully. No. Just feeling a little sick to my stomach, that's all." The rest of the evening the two of you spent in the living room. It was a simple satellite TV, so half of the shows Bakugou frequently watched weren't available. But at least his favorite cuddle station was there. It was a simple romance channel that played slice-of-life animes and dramas. Despite Bakugou's rough exterior, he was addicted to slice-of-life romance stories. You were lying on his lap, popcorn in hand, while he leaned back on the dusty sofa you had quickly wiped down with a damp cloth. "It would be almost comfy here," he muttered.
Huh?
I said it would be almost comfy here, if it wasn't for that horrific second floor. You gulped down a glob of half-chewed popcorn. "Well, there's also a third floor, and you forget the tower."
Tower?
"It's behind the manor. You probably didn't notice it. The tower was supposed to be where my children's room would have been if I had lived here. And I think that's where my book is." Bakugou furrowed his brows.
How do you know?
"Well, each room in the upper floors is locked. Inside of each is a recreation of the room the dead relative had lived in on the time they died."
This is fucked up.
You chuckled. "I know. I think that's why we left. Think about it. Every day you walk past locked doors. Also, I would live in that stupid tower. And I would need to go downstairs every day, get into the house, and what a nightmare." Suddenly, Bakugou's hand settled on your tummy, gently rubbing over it. Belly rubs were your weakness. You raised your right hand and rubbed his cheek affectionately before grinning. "Someone needs to shave."
That's the girl with the hairy legs.
You growled and looked up at him.
They look weird without hair."
He grinned.
They look weird in general.
"I'm gonna punch you." You pouted.
Oh, are you now?
"Mm-hmm." Bakugou smirked.
And what if...
His left hand crawled up from your belly to your head. You whined as he gently stroked your hair.
I do this?
Not fair. You whined as he closed your eyes in enjoyment, while a horrible, dirty thought crawled at his mind.
Who's a good girl?
Once more you whined in enjoyment.
Who's a good girl?
I am... You moaned.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
Your defenses were down, and in this moment he quickly leaned over your face and planted a deep kiss on your mouth. As you felt his tongue penetrate your lips, you reached your claws up to his neck, pulling him further into you. You had muscles rubbing against each other. You could faintly taste the salty miso soup in his salvia. And for a moment, you separated.
So, babe, want me to make you my bitch on your dead grandma's bed?
You grinned. You had me at bitch.